Joining us now is the founder of one of the country's biggest pub chains, Hugh Osmond. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Osmond. We were just talking there about Boris Johnson's promise to level up the country at the election. Are you worried that because of the economic hits of COVID and because of the tier system that England is going to be moving into this week, that we may actually see a levelling down?
Yes, good morning. I'd say exactly that. I think sometimes that these politicians live in another world. They live in something of an ivory tower. And if they would get out and about, if Boris would actually get out and about and meet the people who have lost and are losing their livelihoods, their businesses, the way to support their families because of these restrictions. People in hospitality are seeing their businesses shut down with people put out of work all across the country. And he needs to meet some of those people and see how his measures are destroying those lives and balance that against the very limited good that he is seeing. Some of these businesses that will unfortunately fail if the restrictions continue, they will not reopen, possibly ever. And all this talk of levelling up and levelling down, if he destroys an industry or the hospitality industry and the retail industry, which are the biggest employers of young people, the biggest offerers of entry-level jobs to people who don't have great qualifications. If he destroys all those jobs and all those businesses, he will not achieve his levelling up. There will be extensive misery, there will be more health problems, more suicides, more deaths, and a much worse economy than he could ever imagine. He needs to get out and meet some of the people whose lives he's destroying.
Wow, pretty strong stuff there. Clearly something you feel passionately about. And it's worth kind of reflecting on your background. You kind of founded Punch Taverns, one of the biggest pub chains, involved in setting up of Pizza Express as well. I know how hard it is to quantify these things, but how many businesses could be at risk here?
Well, obviously, it does depend on what happens next. We appear to have had, thanks to perhaps some good work by certain MPs, for which we in the industry are very grateful. We appear to have had a bit of a rowing back from the idea of these restrictions all the way through till Easter. But if they were to go that long, obviously depending somewhat on other forms of government support, if they were to go on that long, you would be looking at millions of job losses just in hospitality, let alone retail, where of course we've seen Arcadia fail. And, I would just make the point, I know others have made it, but in terms of the risk, the average age of people we employ is in their early 20s, and most of our customers, and that's also true of retail. And since the epidemic, if that's what it is, since it started, the total number of healthy people under 40 who've actually sadly died of the disease has been just 46. That's 46, not 46 million, 46 people out of 55 million under 40 who were healthy have died of this. And we need to get it in proportion because he is destroying the lives of many people who are in their 20s when they have absolutely zero risk of this disease. My son's friend from university was saying yesterday that at their university, 1,300 students have tested positive. Not a single one has even been to hospital. I don't even know if any of them have been to see the doctor. So you're destroying the lives of a generation that actually doesn't suffer from the disease. And they need to balance that terrible destruction with the possible good that they are saying. And they need to think of other measures that might save more lives and create less destruction. You could be seeing, 1 million or 2 million unemployed just from retail and hospitality, depending on what happens next.
What the government would argue is that the best way to help the economy is to suppress the virus, because it means that if we get a grip on it, then we can get back to normal more quickly. And they would argue that, yes, although, of course, age is a big factor in how ill people get, they're also worried about young people's ability to spread the virus as well. They do need to balance the health risks as well, don't they?
Well, there's a very large study, as you probably know, Sophie, by the NHS, which is 12.5 million adults. And there is absolutely no evidence that even in families where there are members over 65, that the children being at school and what have you increase the risk to those adults. In fact, there's some evidence that somehow, perhaps by spread by the immunity from other viruses, which we now know exists, such as common colds, not immunity, but resistance, that in fact, parents of children who go to school and perhaps have had these coughs or colds have a slightly lower risk. And this is in a study of 12.5 million adults. So I think this whole idea that you can suppress it in society and that makes people safer, a long study in the Lancet, also one in the British Medical Journal, the two most reputable journals in the UK, both say that lockdowns and measures do not save lives. They may possibly postpone the event, in which case perhaps the vaccine is helpful. But the reality is it would have always been far easier to protect the elderly. I mean, the only thing probably we knew in January about this disease from the outbreak in China, if we knew just one single thing, we knew that it was very, very dangerous for the very old and the very ill. Now, if I'd known that, the single thing I would have done would have been to protect care homes and people in geriatric wards. And yet, as we heard from a member of SAGE the other day, they actually didn't even think about it. It is not a measure in the imperial model, that models for the different non-pharmaceutical inventions, as they politely call idiotic measures like lockdowns. There is not even an intervention that involves protecting care homes. And you heard this this professor last week saying, well, we just didn't think about it. We didn't ask whether they were being protected. We assumed it. That could have saved half the lives that have been lost in that one measure. Instead, they locked down the entire country for no reason.
OK, and pretty clear that you've got some strong views on the impact of lockdown. You've previously donated to the Conservative Party. Would you say that the Conservatives are still friends of business?
Not at the moment. Look, I think the Treasury is responding in whatever way it can and actually doing a pretty good job in supporting jobs. But it does rely on this magic money tree. I mean, when you say 400 billion, that is many times the annual budget of the NHS. We could have spent that on improving the NHS and saving generations of the future. So I think overall, in the health department, they're completely ignorant of how business works and even what the other effects on health are of this virus. In the Treasury, they are giving what support they can. I mean, I'd like to say that, on a more positive note, and having complained about government, I mean, we intend to come out of this crisis to invest. I still plan to open a new restaurant on December the 9th, so very shortly. We've been working on it all through lockdown, a new Copper Club in Cobham. We raised 25 million for our restaurants. We've raised $300 million for another vehicle. I intend, as soon as these ridiculous measures come to an end, I do intend to invest and start employing people and reopen the high street and get things going again. So I'm sure that the government will try to support that. They just need to focus on the damage they're doing in the meantime and get out of the way, use their testing program to protect the vulnerable rather than test all these students. Let the rest of us get on with it so we can stop a crisis that could turn into a 3, 4, 5 year economic event. They need to let us invest so we can get on with stopping that, get on with the recovery.
Definitely good to see that you're still planning to invest. I'm sure you'll have floods of applicants for those jobs when they are advertised. Just quickly, because we are running out of time, the Chief Executive of UK Hospitality said in today's Sunday Times that if the tier system lasts till Easter, we'll be walking through the smouldering ruins of an industry that was the third largest in the UK. Are you also worried that this sector, so important to the UK economy, may never actually recover from this?
Well, never's a long time, Sophie. But I think every day that goes by, more owner-operator and big businesses go out of business thanks to these measures. So yes, I think many people are closing their doors every day now. And just to be clear, under tier 2, let alone tier 3, most hospitality businesses are not viable. And for many people, that is their entire livelihood. So yes, if this were to go on through to Easter, I think a very huge fraction of the industry would close. Many individual owner operators, many people who work in those businesses would lose their jobs, and it would take years to recover. We will be trying to recover and reopen the high street, but it will take years if they carry on with these measures. I just think they need to get out there and see the actual people, and they will see that this is not, just voices for the hospitality industry making scary statements like they tend to do with charts and predictive models. This is not a model. This is not a model that looks to see into the future like some fortune teller or some oracle or the prophets in the Bible, like they use their models. This is stuff that's actually happening now. People are losing their jobs now. They are going out of business now. They're losing the way to support their families now. It's already happening. It's not something that will happen. It is happening right now.
Okay, strong words there. Thank you very much for coming on the programme and talking a little bit about the impact on the hospitality industry. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.